Okay, for members of the public, just to know that this meeting will be all audio. There will not be any cameras. And so we are in the Kentfield School District board room, and we have one board member joining us via Zoom, President Riedel. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. David, you want to start us off?
Sorry, I was on mute. I will call this meeting to order at 6:21 p.m. Do we have any public comment on agendized items?
I do not see any hands up. Okay. I do want to just welcome, we have our two site principals attending via Zoom. So welcome, Grant and Maria.
Thank you for joining us. We are going to forego our opening procedures in terms of Pledge of Allegiance and so on and so forth. We will move right on to the approval of the agenda. Looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Trustee Joseph moving, looking for a second.
Second.
Can you call out a name, please?
Silver.
Trustee Silver providing the second. Any changes to the agenda? Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda is approved as presented. There are no report from closed session. Vice President Sue.
There is nothing to report from closed session.
And public comment. We don't. Do we have any members of the public in the room on public comment?
No, we have no members of public other than staff and trustees in the room.
Okay, we'll move on to item H, and Vice President Sue will be running the roll call votes on a series of resolutions. Please read the title of the resolution and approach them individually. Thank you.
All right.
Before we go into those resolutions, I am going to give a brief presentation. The presentation I'm going to share is the presentation I provided to staff to give them context. And that was on February 14th, related to where we've landed around some reduction for next school year. I will say we had staff that would typically be impacted by this, or most newly hired certificated staff, and we had union representation present as well. So I'm just setting this up to share so those on the webinar can see the presentation I'm providing. So give me a moment here.
Thank you.
David, can you see this okay?
I can, thank you.
And you're just seeing the presentation, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So as I mentioned, this is a special board meeting, March 1st, just wanting to provide context for what the board is going to be asked to consider in just a moment related to resolutions. Just to note, there are some minor changes I've made to the presentation, but nothing significant. I'll highlight those once we get to those slides. So first, I wanted to start with reminding ourselves of our purpose and kind of how we have framed up the work that we get to do as a team, the core beliefs that we believe in around diversity, inspiration, and connection, and then how that leads into our strategic plan and our LCAP goals. So focusing on every learner, recognizing the importance of supporting our staff, fiscal solvency, and community. So I just feel like it's important to continue to come back to this lighthouse. And so today really is going to be talking a lot about staff, talking a lot about fiscal solvency and supporting just our students and what frame are we setting up for them for next school year. So when I met with staff, I met with them, as I mentioned, on February 14th. So the agenda that we had was we went over the budget cycle and fall planning. And just to give them some context, shared a little bit about the process that we go through related to enrollment monitoring and what happens on the internal side. and staffing alignment, and then what adjustments that were being made, and then how that aligns with the education code. So some timelines that we're required to follow. So I'll go through each of these items with you all. This year, what we did is we put, and this is, you've seen this before just on a different slide deck. We put side by side, what is the budget cycle that the state follows, and then what are we to follow as a school district. And so you'll see right here on the left-hand side, September unaudited actuals. And that really determines our beginning fund balance, so we can really look at what's happening during the course of the school year. December, we have first interim. January, the audit report, the governor budget proposal, very preliminary. March, we do second interim, which you'll hear on March 14th from Wade. That is going to be our best indicator to plan for the budget proposal that will come forward to the board in late May as a public hearing, and then as a final approval in June. The governor will provide the May revise in May. So that's where we'll see whatever changes he may make or suggest. And then in June is when the board will adopt the budget. So I want to make note that we have 2 board meetings in May. And the reason is because the second board meeting, we have the public hearing for the budget, so that there can be any members of the public coming out and sharing concerns or questions about our budget. And then final approval is considered at the June meeting that we have. So fall planning, the way that happens is November, December, we monitor enrollment. So there's CalPADS data that's submitted to the state to kind of look at what is our ADA, what's our enrollment that's happening for our schools. So that helps us with some projections. December, February, we begin to project enrollment for the subsequent school year and accept changes in staffing. So we're looking at leave of absence. That's what LOA is. So people that might decide that they're going to go out for whatever reason, retirements, and any resignations that may come forward. So staff are required to let us know that information by February 1st. And then February through March is really determine what kind of reductions that we're going to have based on what we know related to enrollment. So we launch enrollment to the public typically at the end of January, early February. So I want to say January 30th is when we opened enrollment for kindergarten. And then we start just accepting enrollment for kindergarten and TK mainly, but we really have open enrollment at any time. People can enroll in our school district if they move into the area. So we don't say like, if you come in March, you can't enroll for the current school year. So we accept kids, obviously. Per the education code, we're required by March 15th to provide preliminary notification of reduction or release or non-reelect of a probationary employee or a temporary employee. So just for people to know that required timeline. Correction there, temporary employees actually do not require the March 15th deadline. And I think that the district previous to my time and during my time, I feel it's really important to treat temporary employees the same, to give them that same courtesy of letting them know sooner rather than later that their position may be eliminated. Typically, a temporary position is because it's filling somebody that's out on a leave of absence. So that person on the leave might be coming back, or they're funded through one-time money, right? So we don't have the money anymore to be able to pay for that position. The third reason could be we do some restructuring, right? So we may have a position that's a particular title. We may decide we're going to adjust that a little bit to a different kind of title and different roles and responsibilities. May 15th, we have to provide the final notification. So you'll note that that is around the same time that we're preparing the public hearing for the first review of the budget. So those happen pretty in the line because we know by then how many kids are enrolled, specifically kindergarten, and if there's any additional enrollments. And you'll see this in a little bit, but we're monitoring enrollments, but we're also monitoring kids leaving, right? So any notifications or any hints that we're getting that the students may be going elsewhere, moving away, or deciding to go a different route related to their educational experience. And then, as I said, June, the meeting in June is we adopt the budget and the LCAP together. So, and the LCAP is really supposed to be aligned. The goals and strategies and services should be aligned with your budget because those to work hand in hand. So enrollment monitoring and staffing alignment. So these are just the bullet points that we went over with the staff and that I want to share with the board. I think I've shared some of this with the board in the past and with the public. But what happens starting in January is I'm actually meeting, it's a brief meeting, but prior to the board meetings, I meet with our registrar, which is the assistant to the principal typically at both school sites, to find out where we are with enrollment. Any new enrollees, anything we know about kids leaving. We pool our enrollment data, like what did it show in February and what is it showing in March related to how many kindergartners do we have, how many first graders, how many second graders. So we're tracking that very closely. We're also making note of kids that have requested CUME files for the subsequent school year, but we're not taking them out of the counts. right? So, and if somebody's asking about our school, but they haven't actually shown up, we're not counting them either, right? So but we're putting them in a special column to say, we might get another third grader. We might lose a second grader, right? So that kind of thing. And the board hears that at each board meeting. So I have a slide that I provide that says, here's where we're at with enrollment. So you'll know. And I want to say I don't want to quote the kindergarten number. I'm anticipating it to be higher when you hear it in March. So also what we did this year is during the winter break, I provided preliminary information to both site principals related to the data that I was looking at from my seat about projections for next school year, enrolling our enrollment numbers, and had them just start thinking about FTE, full-time equivalents, so we can be able to have some conversations related to what the plans are for next year. And then we had meetings. So I've met with both our site principals individually to talk about like, okay, so what are you thinking about related to programs? What are you thinking about the roles that are happening with your enrollment and staffing and master schedules? And so we've been having those conversations. Those led to where you're getting with those recommended reductions that you're going to be considering in just a tad. Looking at funding resources. So as I mentioned before, the governor comes out with the January proposal of a budget. So we look in there really closely about any new money that might be coming our way or what have you. And so I think one of the things that we learned is that TK is going to be getting some additional, very little, but some additional money. And so that money in my head is going to, okay, so to continue to maintain those ratios, because that's the only money that we're getting, right? So, and that's just kind of really, really fresh information. And that'll be information that Wade will talk about at second interim. And then the last thing is adjust the FTE based on enrollment projections and retirements and leave of absences. So we take all of that information and we start to say, okay, so how does this all fold out, right? So what's going to happen related to how many staff do we need to maintain and how many staff are maybe stepping away? Also for you to know that, and this is part of our collective bargaining agreement, there is a survey that we provide to staff to hear from them related to what would they like to do next year? Are they interested in staying in the same grade level? Are they interested in the same content areas that they're working in? And then the principals have some conversations with them, because sometimes one year you might have X number of grade levels and the next year you might not, right? And so we have to have some conversations about what interest people may have related to the contents in which they get to teach. This is a slide that I changed a bit. And I wanted to point out what I changed. That circle that is light yellow, that's the new circle that I added. So I did not have that on this slide when I presented it to the staff. I wish I had, but I didn't. So these are the factors as we're thinking about our staffing adjustments for the subsequent school year. So the first is enrollment, class size, and ratios. So we're recommending a 2.0 full-time equivalent, multiple subject teacher reduction. And that is really based on enrollment. It's based on where our numbers are and staying within the ratios that we've agreed to based on our collective bargaining agreement. The next one is the natural attrition. And this is really based on retirements and resignations. But I also want to say that from time to time, you hire somebody and they might get hired as a 1.0 full-time equivalent. Then they may say, hey, you know what? I'm actually interested in taking a 40% leave and I only want to work 60% next year. The board ultimately gets to consider that and approve or disapprove. Typically, our board has approved those types of things. And then, but that person always has rights to a 1.0. So unless they notify me prior to February 1st, I need to be sure that I have enough, not I, but the Kentfield School District has enough FTE available to provide them what they're owed. So that person might be on a 0.6 this year, but next year, if they didn't provide me notice, I need to, and they have rights to a 0.8 or a 1.0, I need to have that available for them. So that also impacts some of this planning that's happening. Managing class size average to the ratio caps and ensuring staff feel the rights to positions granted. So that's what I just mentioned there. So it's that notion of leaves and people having rights to their level of FTE. Adjustment to staff due to one-time funding. So as you all are aware, we have been quite lucky to get an influx of one-time funding, some funding that's really focused on addressing the gaps that may have come into play due to COVID and the disruption of the education that our students experience. So there's that piece and just a lot around professional development and support for growth of our team members, but that's not going to keep coming in. Right. So that one-time money, we've stretched it out as far as we could. And so just recognizing that not new allocations are coming. So we need to slowly be weaning out those positions. I'm trying to do my very best to do that through natural attrition versus kind of and over time versus just like pulling the rug underneath. And that's what the restricted funds underneath means. So. And then the last one that I think is really important to highlight is that there is a commitment from this board and from our team of administrators to really sustain programs for our kids. We want to offer a very comprehensive program, whether you're at the elementary school or at the middle school, so that, you know, we can attract a community that really wants to go to school in the Kentfield School District. And so in order to do that, it can be expensive, that's for sure. We're lucky to have a foundation that gives us quite a bit of funds. We're lucky to have a KSPTA that really supports initiatives. And we're lucky to have a parcel tax that really supports what's happening, and a board that supports that idea. So we really want to sustain programs in an effort to have a comprehensive experience for our kids and really meet the needs of every learner. And so I think that also, you know, I was asked, you know, some places might be doing higher levels of reductions. I think we're really just, you know, trying to stay like what's reasonable, what's keeping us within our caps, what's maintaining programs the way in which we have committed to. And so it feels like the most appropriate level. So what's the impact of all these factors? The impact are a reduction in force, temporary releases of classified and certificated staff. So there are some staff that will be impacted. We do have situations where we have vacant positions. So not all of what's presented on the resolutions are actual people that will get a letter saying that they won't have a position, a preliminary letter that they won't have a position next year. There are vacant positions. So an example I will say is we have a Learning Center Plus class over at Bay Sage that was vacated this year. It has not been filled. So that's on the list of reductions. There's not a person that will get not a current staff member that will get a letter about that position. We're managing services based on available funding, and this is really fiscally responsible. So that's why the recommendation I'm bringing forward to you today. So I think this context was very helpful for folks to understand the factors that went into play. It wasn't just something that came out of thin air, and it was a lot of conversation between our administrative team, myself, and just kind of really looking at various numbers. So the ed code requirements. So March 15th is the date in which we have to provide a preliminary layoff notice, which means it's giving the board maximum flexibility and it's giving administration flexibility related to, you know, kind of as they're still planning for programs based on data and information. So what happens is the board is presented with a resolution around particular kinds of service. So that's why it's identified what types of positions are being recommended for a reduction. And then based on that information, we also have a resolution for a tie-breaking criteria. Now, I want to say it was in February of 2020 when the board approved a tie-breaking criteria, which is a board designed criteria. This is not something that's through our collective bargaining agreement, but it's criteria in which we put points if people have the same seniority date, which is the date in which they provide, the first date in which they provide rendered service. So it gives us a way to kind of say, why do we pick this person over that person? And then what is a sample here is a sample resolution, a sample tie breaking, and then a letter. So the staff get it's a very technical letter that they receive. And behind it is a copy of the resolution. And they also get the right to request a hearing. So they may question, why did I get picked? Right. And so just know that, and they would be heard by the board. So just know that could happen. Again, this is very preliminary. So this doesn't mean that all these FTEs will get the notifications, but it's giving the flexibility to provide it. And then May 15th is when the board would approve a final layoff resolution, where you're saying we are for sure going to resolve these positions, or we resolve to eliminate these positions. And that's built into our final budget that will be provided into the subsequent school year. And then two subsequent years through the multi-year projections. Final notices are provided to employees. And then, as I mentioned before, May and June, public hearing for the KSD LCAP and the budget comes forward to the board. Late May is the first meeting, and then the second meeting is in June. And that's there's a public hearing that the public can come speak to, and then there's the final decision the board makes in June. That's it. So those are any questions board members have related to this presentation. No. So I just wanted to provide that to offer context to the board related to what did staff hear about why we're making a recommendation to reduce some positions on the certificated and classified side. And then the preliminary work that's been done as well, as nobody's been provided any notification. But recognizing that this is like certain people's livelihoods and such, we have talked to those people. So myself, Maria, administration, Virginia, we've talked to the people that this would directly impact to say, hey, listen, just so you have the heads up, I'm anticipating that you're going to get a reduction letter. And so, so just trying to do the very best we can to care for folks that are going to be impacted by this. So, unless there's not any other questions, then I think we can move to the action items for the board to consider those resolutions.
Trustee Sue, if you would proceed with H1. And then I'd
Sure.
like to make a comment after you get a motion in a second.
Okay. So H1 action, consider the approval of resolution number 9, reduction or discontinuance of certain certificated particular kinds of services, PKS, for the 2023-2024 school year. So now I start the roll call, correct?
You're looking for a motion and a second.
Oh, okay, I'm looking for a motion. So moved. A second?
Second.
And now roll.
Okay,
Roll
now
call.
roll call. All right.
I'd like
trustee-
to make a comment, Trustee Sue, before you move on.
Okay, yes.
I just want to thank Raquel and all of the administrators for their thoughtful approach to both transparency and their empathetic approach to these difficult discussions. I appreciate Raquel pointing out the survey process, asking our teachers, allowing them to a chance to develop their own careers if they want to teach a different subject or grade level, and I think that's an important part of one of our missions, which is to attract and retain quality staff. Many of these changes are, as Raquel pointed out, positions that are currently empty, but not all of them, and not all of these are choices that people would make. But I think that Raquel and our board and our district's approach to this, I hope it properly reflects our district and this board's deep commitment and respect for all of our employees, and in this case, all of our certificated employees and the important role they play. Thank you.
Great. So now I'll start roll call. Trustee Riedel,
Aye.
trustee Sue, aye. Trustee Joseph,
Aye.
trustee McDonald,
Aye.
and trustee Irwin.
Aye.
All right, resolution number 9 has been approved. H2, consider the approval of resolution number 10, determination of seniority among certificated employees with the same seniority date tiebreaker resolution. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, we'll start the roll call. Trustee Riedel,
Aye.
trustee Sue, aye. Trustee Joseph,
Aye.
trustee McDonald,
Aye.
and trustee Irwin.
Aye.
All right, resolution number 10 has been approved. H3, action, consider the approval of resolution number 11, reduction or discontinuance of classified services for the 2023-2024 school year. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Point of
Okay,
discussion.
Oh, any discussion?
Yes, this is Trustee Riedel. I just like to say, from behalf of the whole board, we have a deep respect for all of our staff, every single person. We welcome our new stronger relationship with our classified staff through their bargaining unit. And we deeply appreciate all the hard work and value that they bring every day to our students and our district. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, I will start roll call. Trustee Riedel,
Aye.
trustee Sue, I, trustee Joseph,
Aye.
trustee McDonald,
Aye.
trustee Irwin.
Aye.
Resolution number 11 has been approved.
Thank you, trustee Sue, for managing that. Raquel, is there anything else you need from us on that section?
No, I think that's it.
Okay. Moving on to pertinent dates, you have a sheet in your packet outlining some pertinent dates that are coming up.
And that was just the reminder about things coming up. There is, I want to say, a concert for third grade on Friday. Am I making that up?
Tomorrow.
Yeah,
It's tomorrow.
Thursday.
tomorrow. Oh, no, Friday.
No, the third grade is tomorrow.
Tomorrow. Oh, tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow night.
That's
right, Thursday.
Tomorrow's Thursday. Losing track of the day.
I know.
So I just wanted you all to have, in case they weren't on the last pertinent date, so that's why we put that together for you. So there's a lot going on in March, March Madness. So,
Okay. Any discussion of any of the pertinent dates? Anything that anyone would like to highlight?
No. No.
With that, I believe that our business in the open part of this special board meeting is concluded. And I adjourn the meeting as of 6:47 PM. And we will recess to closed session.
thanks, David. Thank you to our public. Thank you to our principals that attended virtually, and we'll see you all soon. I'm going to close this now.